Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about Oathbringer. So I've done rereads on pretty much all the Cosmere books and stuff multiple times, so we're not going to just kind of go through the plot and talk about it like a regular review. I want to talk about it, just kind of in a ramble session. So Oathbringer, I think Oathbringer, unlike Words of Radiance, is a fairly unbalanced book. I don't think Brandon managed to balance all the plot lines and everything perfectly. I think the book is very, very back end heavy, and it kind of weighs it down in that way. So I kind of want to talk about some of the different points in the book that I feel like are like not in balance, which kind of leaves the story to be like really, really good, but not nearly as good as Words of Radiance, in my opinion. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below. What are your thoughts on the difference between Words of Radiance and Oathbringer as far as the balance and the way Brandon handles the plots? And of course, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And if you're interested in checking or supporting the channel in another way, you can check out the Patreon. The link is in the description. So with that being said, let's begin. All right, Oathbringer. Oathbringer is really, really good. I really like Oathbringer. I don't like it as much as I like Words of Radiance, especially after so many rereads and stuff. But I really, really do like Oathbringer. Like, it's been basically universally said that Oathbringer has the best flashbacks, like, especially, like, far as contextual flashbacks. Like, all of Dalinar's flashbacks are very, very much contextual to what he's dealing with in the moment. Like, you can see the trigger that triggers a particular memory, and it just makes perfect sense. So I think the way in which Brandon wrote those flashbacks is the best of the flashbacks thus far, and I think that's probably the biggest like shining bright point to the entire story. Apart from the end, the Sandra Lanch is just absolutely ridiculous, but I think like that is probably the biggest well done piece of the story. Ultimately, is the use of the flashbacks. So sadly, the rest of the story is kind of uneven. It's kind of like not balanced in a really good way. So I'll start off talking about Kaladin. First of all, Kaladin is kind of hitting this point where he becomes a cliche of himself. Like he just kind of becomes a trope of his own actions. So like Kaladin in Oathbringer, we basically get him going back to Hearthstone, which is a really great scene. It was pretty much built up to with the backstory and information we've gotten in the last two books. So it was a very, very well done scene, very deserved, and just very well constructed. But then soon after that, he goes to try to do some scouting about the Voidbringers to see what's going on with the singers and stuff. And of course, because Callan, I mean, it's a part of his character, and it's a fundamental part of his character. So it makes perfect sense that this would happen, and it's almost required that this would happen because of the nature of his character and the nature of his Radiant Order. But it happens so often and so quickly that it becomes comical, especially, from a meta perspective. It becomes, of course, this happens again. And of course, what happens is Kaladin eventually meets up with the singers, the newly, newly or I guess newly resurrected, mentally resurrected singers. And like eventually he, becomes friends with them. He turns them into another squad, and then he becomes attached to them and stuff, and like really sees them as friends and like regular people and stuff, which he should, because it's one of the things that Brandon hadn't been able to properly establish yet. So he needed to establish that the singers are regular people and stuff. They're not just this arbitrary evil race like orcs or something like that. And so he needed to kind of humanize them. So this is a perfect opportunity that made sense with the character that was humanizing them and hanging out with them. So it makes perfect sense. I have no issues with it. But again, it just comes off as a Kaladin trope. He can't be around any group of people for more than like 2 days without suddenly becoming their leader and their biggest advocate. Like it's just an absolute like cliche of himself. So like he does that. And then later on, this happens towards the end of the book, though. So Brandon did put a solid amount of page space in between these two events, but it happens again when he gets to Kolinar. He joins the Wall Guard and becomes their leader, and then all of them immediately fall in love with him, and he gets like an army of 500 to go help try to take back the castle and everything. So like he basically becomes like a cliche of himself in this interesting way, and on first read, like it makes total sense. It's like a lot of fun and everything. You're like, oh, that's Callan, recruiting everybody. He's just basically irresistible. But as you read it again and again, and like it becomes trope-ish in a lot of ways, because even in later books that happens. Like it's just a thing that Kaladin does, but it's also a fundamental aspect of Windrunners. So it makes perfect sense that that would happen for him all the time. But again, you can't help but notice he's like a cliche of himself. So apart from like those plot lines that Kaladin gets, apart from that, he's kind of not in the thick of it a lot. This is of course the Dalinar book, so it's a majority from Dalinar's perspective and his level of things and stuff, trying to build this coalition and stuff, trying to talk to the monarchs and doing his politicking and stuff. So that makes a lot of sense. But it also has the same effect on Shallan, essentially. Shallan has like less to do. She's like learning a lot of stuff in the beginning of the book, but by the time Yasna comes back, like she just kind of whines for a while and then just kind of gets put off to the side until they all end up in Shadesmar. So there's just this like lack of. I mean, I guess if you think of Shallan and Kaladin's story arcs, they're basically balanced by both of them not having much to do, and they're just off on these like fractured story arcs off on the side because the main focus is, of course, of Dalinar trying to put together this political coalition. So the book probably feels unbalanced because instead of balancing this way, it's trying to balance this way, if that makes any sense. Because like the beginning of the book is very politicking heavy, and then the back end of the book is very action and like battle heavy. So it feels like that's kind of the balance Brandon was trying to strike with it. And some of it works and some of it doesn't. Like I love the Sanderlanche; it's incredible, and it's like so many cool things happens in it. But a lot of that stuff just it I don't know. I guess because of the nature of battles and action sequences, that feels like a single instance. Whereas all the politicking and stuff in the beginning of the book just happens again and again and again. It kind of gets to the point of repetition. But I do and always will commend Brandon on the way in which he handles this because when we're constantly trying to talk to the monarchs, he gets to a point where he's trying a method and then he'll try it and try it and try it. And then right before it gets very boring for the reader, he tries something else. So like the constantly like doing the span read conversations. We get multiple span read conversations with other monarchs and stuff, and then right before it gets overly repetitive and like you kind of want him to just like give it up or whatever, it basically stops. They stop using the span reads because he discovers he can use the visions, and then when he's using the visions, he's contacting all these people, and then the novelty of it kind of wears off by the time we get to Yanagon, because Yanagon is already exhausted with it and stuff. So it kind of gets to that point, and then he has the vision with Odium, which causes him to stop bringing monarchs into the visions. So right as the visions become less entertaining, he basically cuts that off, and then after that, we basically get the more or less the actual like culminating of the coalition and stuff, and starting to work together, and then that's when we start to get the big flashback points of Dalinar, so it kind of takes away from that. So it's kind of like we're in a scenario that we can't really sit in very long, so something has to happen to pull us out of it, pull us away from it, and go, somewhere else. So that it seems to me to be Brandon's method of trying to make sure the politicking part doesn't get too boring by keep trying to change it up every couple of instances of it and stuff. He has very clear delineations of things they're trying to accomplish, and either they accomplish it or they don't accomplish it, and then clearly move on to another thing. So that happening to me in the beginning of the book, the first few parts, feels a little choppy because the way they have such clear endpoints, especially on a reread, and then you hit the Sanderlanche, and it's just this big continuous kind of conclusion and everything. So it feels a lot heavier, like a meteor chunk that's weighing everything down from this fractured beginning of the story. Like that's kind of how I feel when I think about it like that. Like a lot of the politicking and stuff gets fractured and gets segmented and stuff going all the way up to that point, and then we hit to the point in the end when it all culminates. But it culminates in this brilliant way because like all the answers culminate together, all the mysteries and all the intrigue and all the stuff, everything that's been built up throughout the book really does come to this great conclusion in that Sanderlanche, which is exactly how you should write stuff, which is why Brandon's stuff is always really good, regardless if there's little nuances and little nitpicks that we could possibly point to and, have and that kind of stuff. So I really enjoy it a lot. I am re-listening to Dawnshire right now because I only ever, I think, I read the ebook when it first came out, and I don't know, maybe I went too fast because I didn't commit nearly enough to memory. Because right now, some of this stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, that was the thing. Oh yeah, that was the thing. And like, there's a lot of that happening. So I'm probably going to talk about that one on an individual basis instead of combining it the way I did Edge Dancer with Words of Radiance. So I'll probably talk about Dawnshire when I talk about Rhythm of War. So yeah, make sure you stick around for that. This one's a little shorter one. I think Oathbringer is, of course, really, really good, but I don't think it's as well balanced as Words of Radiance. I really think that it is very much back heavy, and the front end of the book is very much fractured and kind of like it has like a staccato rhythm. versus the end being like a held note, I guess is the comparison I'll make, which is appropriate for the singers. So that kind of works out. So yeah. All right, with that being said, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Of course, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on Oathbringer. Do you agree with me that it's kind of back heavy and it's like the staccato rhythm of the plots in the front half kind of makes it feel uneven in general? So yeah, let me know about that in the comments down below. And as always, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And if you want to support the channel in another way, you can check out the Patreon. Link is in the description. So with that being said, I will talk to y'all next time. Peace.